Hello and welcome to Your New Jersey. I'm Lisa Marie Falvo. On today's show, we'll hear how one New Jersey photographer is using her skills to give back to animals in need. But first, Life After Two Losses has recently become a nonprofit to support, inform, and empower parents in preventing child loss during pregnancy. Luann Foster, after losing two daughters far too soon, has set out to advocate for expecting mothers. Luann is here to tell us about her journey. Luann, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you allowing me to be able to get my story out.
Well, what a story you have. I give you so much credit for coming forward and talking so openly about your losses. So please inform our viewers as to what happened with you.
Yes, I had my first pregnancy loss in 2017, and it was due to incompetent cervix diagnosis, which typically you don't know you have until you've experienced one loss. In 2018, I had another second trimester pregnancy loss, which again was preventable. I ended up getting a procedure called a transvaginal cerclage. And if I would have known that that procedure was only an 85% chance that I would make it to 24 weeks, I would have never gotten that procedure. I would have went with the procedure that I have now, which is an abdominal cerclage. And I now have my rainbow baby, King Cairo, because of that procedure. So I just feel like there's just was not enough information presented to me at the time.
How did your tragedy inspire you to start this nonprofit?
Even though you heal yourself from it, like that sting is always there. So for me, when I had went through this, I felt alone. I hadn't heard of any other women at the time who had a pregnancy loss, who had had a miscarriage, and nobody was talking about it. But I was talking about it on my social media. And from just constantly talking about it, talking about it, women started reaching out to me and saying, like, do know there's hope. I too had a miscarriage when I was like your age, and I've gone on to have other kids as well. And this is not something we talked about. And I felt like when I first started again talking about this was something that was like taboo. People didn't talk about this. I even had an older woman say to me, like, I don't think you should be talking about this online. This is stuff that's like kept private at home. And my response to her is, why? I'm like, women and families are hurting in silence. Why should we be silenced about this when it's so common? Especially when my losses again was preventable. So if we could have these conversations, we could possibly prevent other women and families from going through what my family went through, going through what I went through and my community went through.
How do you help expectant parents navigate pregnancy?
Yes. So it's advocating. One of the things that I really learned about my pregnancies was how to better learn how to advocate for myself. And I'll give you an example. Just asking for certain things. So for me, I know with my condition, there needs to be checks to my cervix. So I had to advocate for myself so that I can receive those extra ultrasounds so we can check to make sure that my cervix was not shortening. I'll give you another example. After I had my son, my blood pressure started going up. I just was not feeling quite right. I said to the staff before I left the hospital, something doesn't seem right. You know, my blood pressures was going up. My limbs were severely swollen. And I was told, no, you're fine. There's nothing wrong with you. Go home. Only to go see a provider again 2 days later and say, listen, something is not right with me. Again, not listened to. I was dismissed and told, you're fine, follow up with us in a week. This is just normal stuff. And it wasn't normal because 2 days later, I found myself again in the hospital. I had about 33 pounds of fluid that was impacting my heart function. It was backing up into my lungs. My blood pressures were hypertensive crisis. Like, things were going really bad. I was crashing, and I found out that I had postpartum severe preeclampsia. So it's one of the things that I really emphasize and stress enough is advocate for yourself and your baby.
But I think a lot of women don't know that they have the right and they should stand up when something doesn't feel right to them.
And can I give you a tip and to the viewers out there as well? So something that I use when I ask a medical professional for something that I know I need, especially as a public health professional, where we know that prevention is key, I ask them to document it in my chart. I said, I'm asking for this. And if you're denying me that right, I would like you to document that in my chart. And a lot of times when I say that, they go ahead and give me what I'm asking for.
Tell us about your expansion plan.
Yes, so I'm currently developing 3 programs. One of those programs we have already executed for the last year, and that is a virtual pregnancy and infant loss support group. What difference from our group from other groups is we want to not only talk about our loss, we also want to empower the women, family, and the community members, because I've learned that pregnancy loss doesn't just impact the mom, it impacts the family members as well as the community that surrounds the mom. So we provide support for all of those that would like to attend. And what we do is we provide tools and techniques to help empower them to get them back to a healthy life.
And I know that you also serve on multiple committees surrounding prenatal health and infant mortality, including the New Jersey Maternal Care Quality Collaborative with the New Jersey Department of Health. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so I was recently just voted in as the vice chair, which I'm really super excited about. This is another one of the leadership positions that is really going to allow me to help implement the change that I see for New Jersey.
We were actually connected because I'm on Governor Murphy's press release list, and they put out a list of the people that were recently attending his budget address. And you were one of the names. So when I saw your little write up, I contacted my producer. I'm like, okay, I want her to go on Your New Jersey. So talk about that relationship with Governor Murphy and how that all came to be.
Sure. So I want to say a couple years ago, the First Lady was going around the state of New Jersey doing family and friends events. It was actually, I went to one of these events and I said to her, here's my story. And not only am I telling you my story, but when the time comes, I would love to be able to share my story on your platform because it's a story that needs to be told. And again, I just kept attending her events, going to her events, telling her when the time comes, I am ready to share my story. So from that, I began getting invited to a number of other events surrounding maternal child health issues where, again, just me being who I am and really like pushing the narrative and sharing my story, I ended up, my organization, Life After Two Losses, end up becoming a partner of Nurture New Jersey. And from there, it's kind of like the rest is history. I've just been able to get involved in as many ways as possible to share my story, to again, help prevent other losses from happening. It's my belief that storytelling saves lives. I'm, again, like I said, a public health professional, and we believe in data, and data is great, but there are some things that data doesn't show you. And I can go on a list of things to tell you that the data doesn't show you that really takes the personal out of it. And data is important, don't get me wrong. We need data to create programs. We need data to explain why we're doing the work that we're doing, and that's great. But I think sometimes when we say, Black women die at 7 times the rate of our counterparts, what you don't see is that child that's left behind without a mom. And that would have been my son had I not continued to advocate for myself. And the data doesn't show you that.
No.
And that's important.
So I know that you help mothers who are pregnant. And I'm sure that you have talked to many women along the way that suffered loss. What is your word of advice to them when they're debating whether or not to try to get pregnant again because they suffered such an awful tragedy? What do you tell them?
So a lot of different things. Trusting yourself is one of the most important things that I tell anybody, because I feel like as a mom, we tend to be the first person to know when something's not right with us or something's not right with our baby. I've also joined Count the Kicks, and I'm now one of their ambassadors, and I'm teaching moms how to count kicks in order to prevent stillbirth. It's important. a lot of women say, oh, I didn't even know about counting the kicks. My doctor didn't tell me about this. I didn't know that there was an app. So again, it's like similar to my situation. It seems like there's a lack of information being given. We need to equip the moms with all the information that we can, because for me, a relationship between a pregnant mom and a doctor is like a partnership. We have to work together so that we can come out with the best result, which is a healthy baby and a healthy mom. We can't, for me, just leave that responsibility up to the doctors. So we need to be able to give moms and families that information too, whether it's counting kicks, knowing the symptoms of when something is wrong after you deliver a baby. We need to just give them all the information so they can make the best informed decision for themselves when they're not with their doctors, because majority of the time we're not.
No. Do you notice a difference between the level of care when you're going to a gynecologist or a gynecologist group versus, say, a midwife?
I can't speak to that because I have never had a midwife. I can't speak to that. What I can speak to is I do feel there is gaps of care between going to your provider and going to the hospital when there's a problem. I feel that there's gaps of care. I also feel that from my experience, my doctor tends to know me. So they know that I have a medical background. They know that I pretty much know some of the things that maybe the average mom wouldn't know. But when I show up in that emergency room sometimes and I'm not dressed as this and I'm in a hospital gown, I'm treated differently. I'm stereotyped at times in regards to, I'll give you an example. When I was losing my second daughter and I showed up at a hospital, not connected to my providers, the nurse said to me, basically, she implied that I had STDs and that's why my pregnancy was ruined, which was not the case. A nurse said to me when it was time to deliver my baby, she said, I said, who's going to help me? I've never had a baby before. She said, your baby's going to die. You'll do this by yourself.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Wow,
So it's
that's disgusting.
it's horrible. And it's again because when I'm in a hospital gown, I'm perceived a certain way. They don't perceive me as, oh, and we shouldn't be, a woman should not have to show up any type of way to get the correct care. She should just show up in need. As medical professionals, it is their job to provide care. So these have been some of my experiences. And I'm not saying that all of my experiences have been bad, because there have been some nurses who have been amazing, even knowing my second pregnancy, knowing my daughter was going to die. And they took care of her as if she was going to live. And I'm so appreciative of staff that go above and beyond. But we really need to address the staff that are doing the wrong thing, because it's already enough to lose a baby, to lose multiple babies, but to have that type of trauma attached to it. I know women that have said because of their experiences, they never want to have children again because it was so traumatic for them. They can't even think about going back into that space and trying again. That's horrible.
No, it's horrible. Everybody has a right to have a baby and to do it in a very happy, giving way. What you just spotlighted is absolutely awful, and I'm happy that there are people like you shining a spotlight as to the injustices going on in maternal health care.
Yes.
Vuan, where can people find out more about you?
So we're on all social media platforms. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we are on Twitter. We do have a website, which is lifeafter2losses.com. However, we are currently rebranding the website. We're taking it from that blogger website, which was originally before I had the nonprofit, and we will be changing that over to a nonprofit. So stay tuned for more.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you have a teething son that you have to tend to, and this was a really special interview. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
A picture is worth 1,000 words. From From families to furry friends, Morris Plains photographer Jennifer Mount captures it all. She gives back her artistic skills to the community by volunteering as a photographer at Home for Good Dog Rescue in Berkeley Heights. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, I know from firsthand experience that you are one of the most patient people to ever work behind the camera, and I'm not going to talk about babies. We're here to talk about dogs. Tell us all about Home for Good Dog Rescue and your work with them.
So, Home for Good Dog Rescue saves dogs from shelters down south in rural areas in South Carolina and Georgia. Basically, after having my first-hand trip with them this summer, I can say that for a lot of these dogs down there, Home for Good is their only hope. It's not like it is in New Jersey. Down there, people leave their dogs outside. They keep multiplying with litter upon litter. They don't believe in spaying and neutering their animals, which up here, almost, I would say 99% of the people do. Home for Good, they will pull dogs from shelters. They pull dogs from boarding situations. It was a very eye-opening experience. I've been in rescue for probably 16 years total. I actually started as a volunteer at the New York City ACC, and it's something that I can't even really put into words, but I came home a different person.
I could only imagine. What inspired you, though, to seek out volunteering at all of these shelters? And really, I want to know, what gave you the idea to use your photography skills in helping these rescues?
So we had a fundraiser for an in-person photo shoot scheduled right before COVID had basically come into New Jersey. It was scheduled for, I usually do like a spring Easter photo shoot for the rescue. And then boom, the pandemic hit. I was stuck at home. I kind of created a few images of my own dogs. I posted them onto my Facebook page. And since then, we have been able to successfully just digitally raised over $15,000 for Home for Good Dog Rescue through these portraits.
How good does that feel that your portraits are the direct reason for all of these funds being raised?
Well, it felt really good knowing I was doing something because I was home and, scared out of my mind as to what was going to happen. And they need it. I don't want to cry. But it's a really sad reality that this country faces day in and day out. And no matter how many times the rescue pulls dogs or cats from shelters, there's still one waiting to be saved. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. They deserve it. Rescue dogs are the most loyal dogs that you will ever meet in your entire life. It was really eye-opening to see it firsthand. You see stuff on Facebook and you see these ASPCA commercials, and I think a lot of times people just turn them off, not realizing that this really does happen. Just a quick story, on our way to the airport in South Carolina, all of a sudden, one of the other volunteers that was driving me to the airport swerved and we almost got hit by a tractor trailer because two dogs had run right in the center of the highway. She had a cable wire attached still to her neck. She had just had a litter of puppies. We pulled over, forgot about my plane to New Jersey, and we got her and saved her. And now she's actually still currently available for adoption. And I don't know why she hasn't been adopted yet. She's the most soulful, beautiful dog. And these are the things that happen on an every single day basis down south.
It's so heartbreaking that these animals have been treated with such disrespect, and it's so nice to have people in the world like you, though, that are trying to reverse that. You are obviously very passionate about this cause. You mentioned that you have 3 dogs of your own. What is their story?
So they're all, actually 2 of them are Home for Good dogs. They were foster fails. I hate to say that because now I'm not allowed to adopt anymore. Now I just foster. I have 3 that I'm fostering right now and 3 of my own. They are from Home for Good. They were, my one dog, Georgia, was pulled from a hoarding situation. And my other dog, Ember, was pulled from a a shelter in South Carolina after she had been badly abused by her previous owners. And, Home for Good Dog, one thing that I have to say is, because I've dealt with a lot of rescues, is they never leave the moms behind. If there's a cute litter of puppies waiting in the shelter to be saved, Home for Good makes sure that that mom comes with the puppies. And a lot of rescues will leave the mamas behind and they will take the puppies because the puppies are highly adoptable. We also save a ton of heartworm positive dogs. Heartworm is super prevalent down south, and it can be avoided with just a simple preventative that we do give our dogs up here in the north. It's caused from a mosquito, and if they don't get the treatment that they need, they will die. So it's very important to give your dog that preventative as well. And they just really save the underdogs, the dogs that really need it the most, the dogs that are emaciated, the dogs that have never touched a kind soul in their life, the dogs that have never had any human socialization. Home for Good is always wants to take that dog to change its life. And that's exactly what they do.
What are the types of breeds that you and Home for Good really see a lot of come through your doors?
So occasionally we will get purebred dogs, but these purebred dogs are not from quote unquote breeders. They come from puppy mills, where we actually have, I think, 5 that came up this morning, Cocker Spaniels that were in, tiny little pens their entire life, doing circles and circles and circles because they don't leave the cage except to breed. And once the breeder, quote unquote breeder, is done with them, they will just discard them or call a rescue or dump them at a shelter. So people don't realize that, the cute puppy that they see online that they're purchasing is actually coming from a place like that, which is called a puppy mill. They just breed for money. They don't care about the dogs. These dogs have had no treatment at all. And that's probably the only place we would really get a purebred. Occasionally they will wind up in shelters. But I have to say, all of the dogs that we get are absolutely beautiful. Every single one of them has a story to tell. Every single dog that I've ever met has a story to tell, and they will change your life. And I feel like no matter how much you try to explain to people really where these dogs are coming from, they turn their head. It's like they still want the cute doodle. They still want the purebred lab. Black labs, I can't tell you how many black labs we get from the South that, people are still purchasing black labs. They're the first ones to be euthanized because it's been a known study that any black animal, whether it's a black cat or a black dog, they don't show well in pictures. And a lot of that is because you can't really see the emotion in their eyes. So they're the hardest ones really to adopt out. And people still are purchasing these types of dogs.
You mentioned how they're so difficult, these black labs, to photograph. I do have a photography question for you. What are some of your tips if people are watching and they want to get behind the camera and photograph their dog? What's your best practice?
Lighting is everything. If you're using an iPhone, make sure you go near a sliding door. If you have a window, lighting will change your image tenfold, no matter what. Lighting, you can use, outside is obviously amazing for animals, but really just keeping focus and being eye level. So you want to, if you're taking a picture of your dog, you want to make sure it's like eye level. So you're talking to the dog, not looking down at the dog or, up at the dog. You want it to show this way.
Is it kind of like working with babies, that the dog should be well fed and rested before attempting to do a photo shoot with them?
Puppies are pretty crazy. Dogs are a lot easier because they, get their zoomies out, but puppies are hard. Usually when I have to do a picture of like a litter of puppies, I have to kind of Photoshop them next to each other because they're just crazy.
That's so funny. Well, like I said earlier in our segment, I know firsthand how patient you are with the baby side. That's another story for another day, though. Jennifer, where can people find out more about you and to see your photography?
Well, you could go to my website, Jennifer Mount Photography. I had just started a rescue portrait project where we're going to be helping rescues throughout the entire country. I have a bunch of photographers that are going to help me do it, that want to help with helping these shelter animals and also like rescues, because rescues primarily work off of donations. So any dollar that they get really, really counts. And I have a couple of photographers that I'm trying, as it's a lot of work, so I'm getting there. You know, it's just because I foster too, so it's I have not that much free time.
Yeah, you have your hands full. You have actual children.
We're-
You have all these
again,
dogs, a business. You're
yes.
Superwoman.
So eventually, I hope to make it a nationwide thing where there's like a photographer in every single state that can do this for rescues in their state. I think that would be really amazing, because right now, with what happened, you know, everybody adopted dogs during the pandemic. Now everybody's dumping their dogs, which I kind of knew was going to happen, but we were hoping that it wouldn't happen. Every rescue I know is desperate for foster homes because they cannot save any more dogs or cats from the shelters until they have a place for them to go. And people are getting their life back. You know, I see with my own family, my kids have their sports and my daughter's in this and that. I have to, it's a lot, but at the end of the day, when you foster, you are saving a life, not only the life of the dog or the cat that you have in your home, but also the one that's waiting in the shelter.
Jennifer, once again, thank you so much. I could talk to you all day about this. It's so interesting.
I
You
know.
do beautiful work. You're a beautiful soul. And thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. And adopt, don't shop.
Thank you for joining me on Your New Jersey. I'm Lisa Marie Falvo. We'll see you back here next week.